Hello.
Humpday Q&A. And look, we have
Hola,
Scott.
hola.
It's amazing. You don't look like Randall. What happened?
Voila.
Have you had your haircut as well?
Uh-huh.
You had your ears lowered. Right.
I had a bunch of them cut.
Just one. No, just had the just the one.
Hey, it's the fastest way to lose 10 pounds I've ever seen.
Wow. Imagine if we did actually just 10 pounds of hair on your head. That would just be like...
You saw me the other day.
All right.
Look like Doc from Back to the Future.
All right. Let's what's his name? Chris. I can't remember his name. No. Right, moving on. No. All right. Come on. Let's get to it. Let's get to it.
You're driving. All right. Be
nice.
Nice. Be respectful. Be constructive. We're on YouTube, not Reddit. Don't post anything that's adult, rude, offensive. Come on, this is common sense. Don't advertise or promote anything like, I need a job. Don't spam the same question over and over. We keep a list. Every time we see a question, it goes to the bottom. If it was already in the list, it still goes to the bottom. So if you keep asking, you're never going to get answered. Don't harass anybody. It's not tolerated. You'll be blocked from here. And we'll turn around and, tell the moderators of Discord and the Slacks and Google Groups and Reddit. So, yeah, you're going to find it hard to log into anywhere. And have a good time.
Yes, that's what you're here for. All right.
Preferably without alcohol until like 4 o'clock.
Let's introduce ourselves.
After that, well.
My name's Simon Lightfoot, Flutter Community Leader and CTO at Dev Angels London. And you can follow me on Twitter at Dev Angels London. Scott.
My name is Scott Stahl. I am also a community leader. I am a co-organizer of GDG Cleveland. I am known to hide under the stairs and do a little coding at Dev Angels London. And I've also got a side gig with Good Dog Apps.
And we have a Randall with us. Randall, yay.
Hey, hi. I'm Randall Schwartz. I'm a Dart and Flutter Google developer expert since the very beginning of the program, so it's been a while. I'm also the question magician for this show, which means I am watching the chat to see if you put Q: in front of a line. Then I take that as one of the questions for us to answer. Be patient. There's sometimes a delay of up to an hour or so before we get to your question, but rest assured, we see them all, we queue them all. And as Scott just mentioned, if you ask the same question twice, I take it out of the top and put it in the bottom. So don't do that. Very scary that way. We have so many guests on today that I'm just going to be behind the scenes pretty much, but just wanted to pop in and say hi.
And I do want to tag on one thing there to what Randall just said. It can be a very long time before we get around to your question because we try to answer everything thoroughly and you ask questions pretty fast. So what you also want to know, okay, is we look at our list of questions and we divide the amount of time by the number of questions we still have to answer. If the result ends up being 2, we cut it because that's 2 minutes per answer and we never, ever keep it down to 2 minutes per answer.
We still run over even with that rule. Yes.
Yep.
We try and keep it short though. We might even have some live coding today. I think people seem to like that segment. So we have some interesting things to look at. Right. Anyway, without further ado, let's get to our guests on. Remi, welcome to the stage. Remi.
Hey.
Welcome.
Happy to be here.
Do you want to introduce yourself? You need no introduction, of course, but...
Yeah, sure. So I'm Remi, working at Invertise, doing open source stuff. And I'm mating a bunch of projects like Riverpod and Provider, Breeze, Hooks. I've heard of those. So yeah, if you have any Riverpod question, feel free to ask me anything.
Wonderful. And we also have a John. John, welcome to the stage.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, how's it going?
Good.
Well,
Please
decorated.
Well, I've had to move offices. Yeah, you haven't been here for a couple of weeks, Scott. So they decided to close my personal local office, and so
personal office.
Yeah, well, it was basically my personal office since I was the only one ever in it. So yeah, the cost was deemed a little bit too high, I think, to maintain an office here. So I'm now in my own home office. But
are they paying you rent?
no, they are not. I do get to claim it on my taxes now. But
I gotta say, you can do like tax deductible stuff. Yeah.
It doesn't give me a whole lot, but yeah. So I let's see. I've been here a few weeks now, back to back in the past. But for those that are new, John Weasley, I work for Microsoft on the Android platform team at Microsoft. I've been doing Flutter for a long time, as of most of the guys here. I'm the person currently behind the Flutter community Medium, handling publishing the articles and getting that stuff out, and hanging out with Randall and others on the Discord server for Flutter Dev, answering things there.
Cool. And it looks like we've just been joined by Danielle. Danielle, welcome to the stage.
Well, hey there. How's everybody doing? Sorry I'm late.
Oh,
I'm good.
That's all right.
Doing good.
And I'm Danielle. I presume we're doing introductions. So I'm Danielle. I'm a Flutter developer from Florida in the United States, and I'm also one of the organizers of the Flutteristas. So if you are watching this and you are female and non-binary and not a member of the Flutteristas, you should hit me up, and I'll get you joined up. So
great. Well, as we did say before, get your questions in the chat. That's the little queue in front of your question, so Randall can go find it and bring it to us. I think we had a couple before the show, didn't we?
Possibly.
We're going to dive straight into it, unless anyone has any updates. What's been happening recently?
Just that it was put out publicly a little while ago. The Flutter team would like people to stress test the beta channel.
Yeah.
So if you could all switch to beta and abuse it, see if you can break it, see how many ways you can break it, but please be sure to let them know, file those issues.
Right. Let's get on to the questions. Let's see.
How can I optimize the loading time of Flutter Web? How can I optimize the loading time of Flutter Web? Any tips? First of all, okay, it is a Flutter Web app, not a web page or website. That's good. What about deferred imports? Are there deferring some of your imports could help, because if there are things you don't need right away, you can load them in the background while the user is seeing the first parts of your app. That's one possibility. Si?
No, I was going to say, I was just going to say, like, deferred imports is, if I remember rightly, it generates a JS file for each.
Yes.
And then you only, obviously, once you then access that area, it then downloads that JS file. So you save yourself the upfront download time. And obviously, it doesn't have to pass that JSON and JavaScript and so on and so forth. So it should be also quicker.
There might be a video out, though, that talks about this, too.
I think there's definitely some stuff around. It's not new, but they have got just we spoke of this last week. They have actually got rid of deferred library. I think it was the class now that's now deprecated. That was deprecated. Now it's gone. That doesn't mean you can't use deferred imports. It's just you do deferred as in your import syntax, and it does it all for you. The compiler. So you shouldn't have to do anything magical to make it work. I guess that's it. I mean, unless anyone else has anything else.
I actually was going to pull up the link to the video I did with Flutter Forward about just this topic.
Oh yeah.
So, now a lot of things that he's talking about there are for that, and I would say that there's a little bit more you can do. You can also make it appear like it's going faster by, putting something like some sort of a loading animation in to your, so that doesn't necessarily help it actually getting something done faster. It helps it look like you're going faster. Definitely want to look at what all is downloading, because if you're pulling down assets before you need them, like fonts and things like that, that can definitely be an issue. Like my fonts are getting built dynamically, so I can't. So font shaking doesn't do any good for me because it doesn't know which ones I need or not. But if you can get to where you're using just constants for that, then that can help with that.
So that bit you spoke about the loading, I'll post a link to that in. Hang on, let's just actually see if we can bring this up on the stream for me here. Let's see now. Fingers crossed. There we go. So yeah, there's a section on the Flutter site customizing web app initialization, and this explains how you can change the default JavaScript code and have it initialized. There's actually a really good example in the it's links here, the initialization code or the Flutter gallery.
Yeah.
That it will take you to sort of an example here, which has some animation and JS and CSS.
Yeah, it does a breathing animation, and then at the end zooms out. And so it's a great example based on that.
That link is in the comments for anyone that wants to see it or get to it or whatever.
Okay, I'm not on right yet to comment, so if you could share the link I just put in our little chat, that'd be good.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And that's the video I did in conjunction with Flutter Forward.
Oh, look, I have a question, Daniel. Does your Flutter Forward video show that?
Thank you,
That's
Steph.
not a leading question.
I know, right? Especially because she's my co-organizer in the Flutteristas, and I posted the video on the Flutteristas YouTube. So I suspect she might have seen it. But thank you so much, Steph. That's amazing. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So check out the video that's posted. Obviously, after this live stream.
Of course, I think so. Yeah, my video will be there. Static. Yeah, be here live.
Let's see. How's this one? How to handle errors and exceptions throughout the app, specifically from APIs efficiently. How to know when to catch and when to throw an exception error.
So it sounds like they know how to do it. It's a question of knowing when to do it.
Right?
With APIs, when I'm doing gets and puts and posts and all that kind of stuff, I've got a class where I've isolated all of my API, at least for a given API. I've isolated all my function calls so that the outside of the world can look at that. I have taken the client, the HTTP clients .get, and I've wrapped that in something that actually will check for the standard exceptions that I expect to get. And so that I can actually then return known exceptions that mean something to my app. And so that's what I end up doing with it. But I still end up at that point wherever I call that, I wrap that in a try catch just so that it can do something UI wise that's meaningful for what happened if it cares at all. If it doesn't care, it can ignore it.
Remi, John, do you have anything you want to add to?
I would say it kind of depends on your architecture quite a bit. Like if you're, for example, using Riverpod, you might just want to let the exception throw, and because you would likely be using something like feature provider, which already catches the error and converts it into a async error for the UI to handle. So if you're not using that and maybe doing things manually, you may have to do the try catch and convert things and all. So it's pretty depending on what you're doing.
I mean, the pan that I normally go for is very similar to what Danielle was just saying. Like, anything that's external to your application that might throw exceptions, you want to isolate. You don't just really want to be handling external exceptions all across your application, right? So it's a bit like you might get timeout or a socket exception or a network or host not, like it couldn't look up the DNS. That's in another different type of exception. I can't remember what it's called.
May not be able
but the point here is, sorry again?
May not be able to decode the JSON is a very common one.
Yeah. I mean, like again, like could not pass the JSON because it was HTML, got returned from a Wi-Fi captured connection. But the point here is that you kind of get all this other stuff, weird stuff happening with the API calls. You want to keep that away from the rest of your app as much as possible. So you have your API service or whatever your backend is thing for using, like example, HTTP client. I tend to let wrap those exceptions when they occur into my own sort of format of exception, API exception or something, and then have that throw again. So this is just converting all those different exceptions that can occur into some sort of base type that can then be passed down to a lower level that can then handle that exception and depending on what it is, can update the various screens appropriately. there's a name for the pattern that kind of I use, this kind of layered pattern. Repository. I guess the repository pattern would be like kind of the best kind of example of that. It's hard, right? Because it is very specific, as Remi said, it's very specific to your architecture.
Yeah.
But I think there's some general rules in terms of just, the single responsibility principle. Don't repeat yourself. Don't just put the same sort of error handling across your application. Make like a widget or make a class, a mixin or something that you put into your repositories that does this kind of error handling stuff for you, so that you're not, you've got a clean architecture essentially from that. It's really simple. As soon as you start seeing that you need to do something twice, you then think about abstracting it out. So you only do it once. You only have the code in your app once. That's really we have to think about these kind of things.
Yeah, it's a combination. It's only coding it once, but it's also making your what's using this API not care about the implementation details of the API.
Yeah. That is kind of an interesting one, right? Because I've seen this before, like lots of the very, very basic examples of Flutter apps where you see is from the UI perspective, someone would create like a feature builder and that will go off and just, call a function which does a HTTP GET request, and then of course it blows up the entire application with something goes, or they just throw an error widget on the screen. It's just like great. But,
yep.
There's not, if you have like some layered architecture, then you can do things like, oh, this time it failed, but I have something in my cache, so I can return the cached version, right? That kind of, or return the cache. You have a stream and have the cache version return immediately whilst you're making the request to the network. And if it fails, well, you can ignore the error, right? Because you've already got the cache version. Things like that, offline first behavior that you can kind of do if you handle your errors and exceptions correctly.
Also, I've seen a comment mentioning converting errors and using some form of result object to use kind of like the functional patterns if you're used to it. It's an interesting one. Personally, I'm not super fond of it. One of the issues I've seen is it's very easy to silence errors when you're doing that. And you may have an error, but it's just never reported to the logger because it's just not using the error scenario.
I feel like there's a separate thing there, right? Like proper logging, proper logging of actions within your application, so that when crashes occur, and another thing you can do is it doesn't have to be a crash error, but you should be reporting it anyway. Things like network errors and host DNS lookup resolution errors and things like that, you don't want to report. Like so I see it so many times in apps. Also, they let these things go through to crash analytics, and you get these like huge crash analytics logs that are full of like can't resolve the host name. And it's like that shouldn't even be reported, right? Like that's Anyway, all right. Let's see what the next question is.
All right. So what do you think about Compose iOS? I think the name has actually already been used, but can it be a good alternative to Flutter? Well, the first question I have is, can it be released to Android and web and all the desktops?
I'm assuming this is like Jetpack Compose, but for iOS. Would be my. I've never seen it before, so this is my assumption.
I think so.
Right?
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, I suppose you could do the same. I don't know if you can do the same if you can just compile the same code for both, and it just works without any specialization. The thing is, Flutter is also doing something separate to those things, right? Like I suppose is Compose iOS in Kotlin then? Are you running is that Kotlin multi-platform? I'm really confused.
It might be.
Even if Compose iOS was using the same Compose styling but in Swift, you're still going to have to write Swift code, right, for all your logic and behavior, right? So then you're still going to have to write your code twice, right? But even if you don't do that, we talk about these things, but Compose is just like the UI side of Flutter is just one part of Flutter as a whole, right? It has so many other features. So I would guess on its own, it wouldn't be a direct alternative. But sure, if you think it does what you need it to do, go on.
Personally, I would say it might be an alternative. I'm not too familiar with it, but I know some people might be scared will it replace Flutter, and I don't think it would, even if it was a complete, even if it had all the features that Flutter has. Because I mean, we have usually a bunch of competitive products everywhere. Like even in the web world, we have React, which also have Vue and all. So we can have multiple standards. It's not an issue.
Yeah. Well, as an alternative, right? So.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm just taking a look at a few of the examples I'm looking at here.
Yeah, it looks like it's just they're taking Jetpack Compose and bringing it to iOS.
It looked to me like, they were actually taking Jetpack Compose itself, because apparently they're trying to take Jetpack Compose to multi-platform.
Right.
And this is an implementation of that.
Don't know, but it looks interesting. Anyway, okay. There you go. There's our opinions. For what it's worth. All right.
Yeah, it's opinions. So
what does Michael say?
All right.
I'm doing something. Go on.
I'm doing something like a sprite sheet to hold samples of paint swatches, a JPEG of a collection of 200 by 200 images. I'm wondering how big I should cap the size of the master JPEG.
Oh, hang on. Hold on. I'm doing something like a sprite sheet to hold samples of paint swatches.
Right, and each one is 200 by 200. Yeah.
Right. No. Is it 200 by 200 pixels or 200 by 200 images?
200 images. Sorry, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, honestly, I'm like, but why? No, I mean, like, if it's a paint swatch, is that just about color? So have your color codes, right? You'd be better off just sending your color codes down to your app, surely. And then you can just render a square of any size in that color.
The other thing, though, there's textured paint. There's two-tone paints. In automotive, also, there are paints that are different depending upon which direction you look at them.
Yeah, okay. All right. As a JPEG see, the thing is, I wouldn't do a sprite sheet. I don't.
Yeah, I'm looking at this, remembering when people were using 4K images for their icons.
Yeah. The thing is, the only reason to use a sprite sheet for web.
He says they're watercolors. Paint swatches.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just sort of run this down. The reason why sprite sheets were a thing. Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. They're a thing for games and so on and so forth. That's completely separate to what you're doing here, right? But also, they're not that large. Definitely not that many images, right? But when it comes to web, where sprite sheets kind of really became popular, and that was because doing lots of little requests for very small image files actually took more data to send the request and the response headers than the actual image data itself. So it actually was more efficient, and it also meant there was less request overhead in terms of back and forth to request, like, let's say 400 images, right? I know there's definitely not that many, but let's say 50 icons, you could just do in one request and get 50 icons back, and it ended up being more efficient. In the sense of what you're doing on an app, I'd say that you'd probably be better off like dealing with the downloading of your images as one thing, but not having a sprite sheet, because you've now got to have that full thing in memory. Especially when it's that big. If you've got 200 by, did he clarify if it's 200 by 200 pixels?
No, he just said
no pixel size.
So yeah,
it says images, not pixels, right? So I'm assuming it's 200 images across 200 images down.
Yeah.
I mean, how many pixels are they? They've got to be a reasonable number.
How big is each one?
You can't do a sprite.
If it's 10 by 10.
Well, he's saying
200 by 200 pixels.
But, okay, the question really here is how many across and down, because you're limited to 4K. GL textures and other things are limited. Like, okay, you've got high limits now, like 16K, but you shouldn't guarantee anything more than 4,000 pixels by 4,000 pixels on the mobile device. And to be honest, that's, if you make a sprite sheet up of these 200 by 200, I don't think you're going to get any benefit.
Yeah, and if it's just a straight watercolor color, would it be possible to take your images and do a color picker and then do a constant color?
Honestly, like thinking about like the sort of like your decoding and caching and everything else, let the system do that on the 200 by 200 pixel images. And if you're trying to like efficiently download it, then you can do things like a multi-part response and actually have all your images come down in one request, which you can't do in a browser because the way the browser works. But with an app, you've got full control of the transaction with the server. Or do it as like you zip them up on the server and send a zip file down to the app and it can unzip it.
Yeah, he's answered the 200 by 200 pixels. So I'm guessing that it's a collection of images, and each image is 200 by 200.
Yeah. The question is how many images, right? Like,
yeah.
Right.
He's asking how big he should cap the size of this like master sprite sheet. Well, I don't have a limit and just do them independently. You don't really need a sprite sheet. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, if you're doing it with, exactly. If you do the images independently, it also lets you lay them out separately, assuming that they don't need to be in a X by Y grid. Now, all of a sudden, you can say if it's on a tablet turned landscape, you can show more across and get going on. If it's on on my phone, it's very narrow. It gives you more options if you do it that way. If you make it one big sheet, then now you're stuck with either scaling that sheet properly or with, scrolling it or whatever you want to do at that point.
They do that thing on web where they offset the background by X and Y, and then they crop the size. So basically they're selecting a portion of the image to be displayed. However, of course, depending on how you load that, if you're not loading you might be loading the image multiple times in memory. So you want to be careful you're not doing that by mistake. To be honest, the other side of this is also with like, yes, you want to run this on web or desktop and you're resizing your window, as Daniel just said, you might want to change from a row to a stack, to row to a column, or have them wrap around nicely. In which case you can't. It becomes more difficult. It just feels to me like the use case of a spreadsheet is not there.
This. Yeah, I mean, part of it is how are you using them? What are you getting? Like I said, if it's just water paint or watercolor paint swatches, like Simon said, you might be able to just do it by putting in all the colors and not having to have an image.
I mean, I have made an assumption there that's not for Flutter web. I mean, even on web, I think you'd still, honestly, like with what you've now got in terms of local storage in the browser, and you can cache these things locally. It's not like the early 2090s, like where it was, and the reason why sprite sheets were the big thing that they were back then. You could download like a zip file and now extract it in your browser. Like there's literally, you can do zip stuff in your browser. So it's like,
So at the risk of coming from far left field, if the overhead of connecting over and over again for individual images is an issue, what about a stream? And still not using a sprite sheet, but a stream of the images.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so you do what's called a multi-part response from the server, and essentially it's like sending multiple replies for the same request. In essence, in fact, HTTP2 actually allows for that. It's called push, which is quite handy actually. I don't know. There's lots of things to explore. Hopefully that helped us. My rambling. I don't know.
And the other thing I would say also is that, especially if it's an app on a phone or something, with the density independent pixels, 200 is a pretty large area. Yeah. So if you're doing that with for paint swatches, that may be overkill for the size of it anyway.
Well, you've got about 300 density independent pixels across. Your average device ratio is 2. Yes, you got 600 across, 200 by 200. So you're going to get like what, 3 across?
Maybe, yeah.
If you have no padding.
Yeah, but I mean, on average, like that would be the maximum size you're going to get to without any aliasing.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Right. All right. I guess next question.
Hi, Remi.
Oh, what? It's one for Remi.
Yay.
Are you working on new features or lint rules for Riverpod?
Yeah, of course. I'm making I have a bunch of them planned. Not going to talk about all of them, but some of the main ones coming are one of the things I'm working on literally right now is a way to make scoped providers kind of compile safe through lints, detecting through lints if you're using a provider that's scoped to a tree, but you forgot an override. And another one is detecting whether you should.
Audio cut?
Yeah.
I think his audio. I think we lost you, Remi. Say again. No.
We lost you after you said another thing, I believe.
So your audio seemed to be dropping out throughout the stream there a little bit. So maybe the batteries are gone. Can you hear us in your earpods?
Okay.
We can't hear you.
So I think what Remi just said is get any feature request you want in, he's going to do it.
So Remi, we're going to give you a Microsoft answer for your problem here. Are your headphones plugged in?
Every time I turn it off and on again.
Did it switch microphones on me?
Yeah, it's StreamYard. It might have.
I tell you what. You can leave StreamYard, close it, and come back in if you want to give it a go. All right. We'll jump on to. We'll leave this one here, and you can come back and answer. We'll carry on with another question here. Parajoyce says, "Have it gone?
Have you had any success with getting GitHub Copilot to create Dart code within Android Studio? Just trying to test it out of curiosity. Can't get it to generate anything. Where's Randall when we need him?"
He's here.
I'm using it in IntelliJ, so I've not used it in Android Studio, but IntelliJ I would think, would be similar.
It would be the same. You can't get it to generate anything. Works fine for me.
Yeah.
So, and that's in IntelliJ though. But I mean, it is based on the same thing. I wonder if just making sure you got the most recent version. And the thing is, plugins are only compatible with certain versions of Android Studio / IntelliJ. So there could just be some sort of issue there.
There's another interesting thought on that. Are they developing it for IntelliJ or for Android Studio? Because Android Studio is usually a version behind. It's not a bad thing. It just takes them a while to bolt on all the extra things that you need for Android development. So
they did actually just release Flamingo, which it has got some. There's a banner on the site. Yeah, there's a known issue with that. Actually, I'm gonna just since Remi, do you want to say something? Can we hear you?
Oh,
just about. Say something again.
Good morning. Good evening.
Yes.
Were you going to pull up the?
I was going to pull up the banner just so people are aware here of what we're talking about because. Let's see if I can get this up on the stream here. Yeah, let's do it side by side because that's probably better. Sorry, Danielle, you're coming up there. Yeah, so let me. There we go. Thanks. So if you go to the documentation, you'll see you've got this lovely banner. Oh no, it's here. Android Java migration, Java Gradle migration. This is the bit that people probably. Yeah, so if you're using Android Studio Flamingo release, you need to follow this guide. I'll pop the link in the chat if you haven't heard about it. So if you upgrade your Android Studio, you basically need to upgrade your what's called AGP or the Android Gradle plugin. That's what it stands for. It has to be between versions 7.3 through to 7.6.1 inclusive. Basically, you need to upgrade one of the files so the wrapper is updated so it works. Basically, anyway, I'll put that in the chat just so everyone's got that. But it's announced right now because obviously when you upgrade, your project might break, and you should probably make that change anyway, no matter if you're upgrading or not. Probably compile faster.
Right. So let's go back in time. Hi, Remi.
So where did I stop then?
What are your so where do we send our requests so that we can flood you with different requests?
It says here also SM solution. What does? Oh, my missus. What is
State management.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I never heard it. I've never heard it called by its initials before. I'm sorry.
See what happens when you drink tea instead of coffee.
Yeah, that's just what happens.
So yeah, like I mentioned, I'm indeed working on a bunch of lints. So there is a lab on the GitHub repository where you can see all of the things I've planned for lints. So you might just want to look at it.
So an interesting one here that's kind of an aside, but for people who are newer, you've done Riverpod, you've done hooks, and you've done freezed. When would you use each and for what purpose?
Always use Riverpod.
Freezed is kind of for things like data classes, union types and pattern matching a bit. So kind of like the Dart 3.0 features with a few other things like serialization. So freeze may slowly over time be less useful, but you can use it right now. Riverpod is kind of for your global application state. Business logic, typically, as you call it. And hooks is more for local state here, which is like text editing controllers, animation controllers, all of those stuff goes into hooks.
Cool. I guess we're going to just carry on to the next question. Where was that? Where can they find that link? If you want to send me the link to your list of what you're working on.
Yeah, I sent it on the chat.
Oh, you did. I'm running behind. So I'll pop this in. I'll bring this up on the screen here for a second. So it's the GitHub issues, and they're labeled, are they? Yeah, labeled Binter.
Yes.
So you can find all those on the repo. I'll pop that link in the chat for everyone. All right, we have another Riverpod. There you go, another Riverpod. Riverpod state caching. I guess this is a question: when Riverpod state caching with offline support?
Yeah, it's definitely planned. It's more for the end of the year, I would say. For now, I'm focusing on stabilizing Riverpod a bit and doing limps and all, because they are a way of stabilizing the user experience, like spotting common mistakes and all. So it's coming, but slightly later.
Awesome, thanks. Cool. I guess we'll go to the next question. Lucas.
All right. I always hear different opinions about this, so I wanted to ask you what you think. Generated files, especially when using packages like freezed, should they be committed or not?
I answered that in the chat, but my answer is absolutely yes. And the reason why,
I'm thinking the same,
is so that you have, if part of your deploy process, for example, is doing a build, then there's always chances that stuff could change out from under you that's not what you were expecting. So because of that, I would say you always check that in so that whenever you do want to update, a new version comes out or something, and you want to try the latest version of freeze, that by doing, if you control when that actually takes effect, so you can actually try it first. It's not just happening behind the scenes. That's my opinion.
It's exactly that, and exactly the reason why you check in on an app. You check in, not a library, on an app. You check in your pubspec log file for the same reason, right? Because the version of your dependencies is how you built your code. Therefore, the actual version that you're using, the direct version that you're using, should be committed on that into your repo, so that when you do a build, it's building with those exact versions of those dependencies. So you come back later, check out that thing, and then you're getting different versions of your dependencies and going, why is the behavior different? Why can't I go find this bug that this person was having on this old version, right? That kind of thing. So you want to make sure that you're checking everything in.
Yeah, I would add that if you're going to commit the generated files, one thing you might want to do is write a test that checks the generated files are up to date, so that if you forget to update them, the CI will fail. There is a package made by Kevin Moore for it, which is called Ensure Build. It's just a one-liner in a test file. It does it for you.
Yes, and on that point, only on apps, because on a library, the problem is committing. Let's say Remi was to commit Riverpod and produce Riverpod with a lock file that had it locked to a specific version. then you were using a different subversion, then you would have a dependency conflict. So you don't want to commit your lock files for libraries. It's down to the top level. The thing that's doing the compilation would be the app level to actually decide on those strict dependencies, shall we say, right? But obviously, Remi, I'm talking for you, Remi here, but obviously Remi's library, if he's got a dependency on, let's say, I don't know, RX Dart, right? Then there's going to be a version that he's specifying that he's capable of working with, his code is. But that might be variant on like the minor revision change, which is quite common.
Is that actually how it behaves?
Yeah.
I've never actually tried committing, publishing those files. I'm actually wondering if that
they actually stay in the they can't get over you can actually overrun. It's just not good. It's not good practice. They won't. It's complicated, but yeah, in essence, even the documentation says you should not be doing this for a library. I think actually I wonder if the Dart point system actually will mark you down if you commit a lock file. That might be interesting to know.
Yeah, actually, I'm wondering if it's not just ignored by default, like in the pub ignore file, which you can specify manually. I'm pretty sure the default already ignores it.
Yeah, I think the default is to ignore it, but doesn't mean you can't.
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway, so the other side of this is, I would say, the rules, as Remi said about like you might have some PR or check-in rules around sort of like verifying that the code is generated, but also you probably want to add the generate code to your analyzer ignore, right, potentially. So inside your analysis options, you can say analyze exclude this directory. Remi's probably going to disagree with me here, but that's one option. Because obviously each time you generate the code, you might have a set of linter rules that the generate code does not abide by, and so you're going to get discrepancy. But also formatting is another one. So you might want to, if you want to ensure strict formatting of your code, the generate code you kind of want to ignore from that, because again, always format it is the other thing, right? But
so, I believe there's a slightly better way nowadays, which is you can write ignore type equal lint, and it disables lints, but it still enables errors if there's somehow an error. Whereas if you exclude it in your analysis option and you have an error, it just doesn't appear. So it makes the bugging
you mean you just exclude? You're saying ignore lints for that one directory.
For generated files. Freeze doesn't by default. The .freeze.dart contains the ignore type lint.
Yeah. So you're talking about the comment that you put at the top of the generate file.
Yeah. And you can do that in your build YAML file for the .g.dart to disable lints in those. So you don't have to exclude the analysis, you just disable lints.
It's not always, it depends on the generator though, right?
You should be able to configure it in your build YAML. Because all the generators use all of the generators using .g.dart are relying on source.gen. And source.gen offers the flag for adding whatever ignore comment you want.
And let's say, no, there you go. Awesome.
See, your Riverpod package likely does this. I can give you an example if you want.
Great.
One more aside on that. We were talking about subversions, and I don't mean subversion, I mean subversions, and possible dependency conflicts with the updates. Simon, we stopped using the little chevron. I can't remember what they call it.
Depends
quite a while ago. We've been doing exact versions, right?
Depends on what you probably want to versioning. It just depends, really. Hang on. I'm just trying to find. Do you want to see if you can find that? I'm kind of curious. Do you want to see if you can find that build YAML change we were just talking about? Because did I find it?
I'm doing it right now. I'm searching for it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it in the YAML I'm looking at. Anyway, yeah, I mean, so that's another thing you can do, right? You can just remove. So I think that's another thing I've seen as well, that everyone puts the chevron. That's the sort of the up kind of, I don't know, up pointing arrow. Correct. Yeah. They put that in front of all their versions always, which basically means accept all minor version changes, which you may not want to do, especially if you're trying to resolve a version conflict and it wants to accept a higher version than a lower version or something like that. So you can always just put an exact version in there, and it solves. It means that you're saying, I want to use this very explicit, this exact version.
But again, if you did that in package, that's not that different than checking in your log file.
Yeah, you definitely. So this is another thing that we see all the time, right? That is, packages have their dependencies are too strict, right? A lot of packages say, I want this, but it should be greater than or equal to this, for example, right? And if their package breaks, they can just change their versions. But most of the time, a package should be very, open to those sort of version changes, right? At least up to major version changes a lot of the time.
Fun fact, I actually had the opposite use case where the children was too
restrictive.
Open, you would say. No, I wanted to use only between 5.7.0 and 5.8.0. You see, restricted more. Because the reason was when you're using the chevron, whenever there is a new feature that could technically make your package stop compiling anymore, like if somehow you're implementing an interface from a dependency, and that interface adds a new method, you need to implement this new method. And so I was depending on custom lint on the analyzer package, and the analyzer package tends to add a lot of visitor methods, and so that can break things a bit. So that's one use case where you might want to not use chevron and a slightly stricter version.
Thanks, Remi. I got your link. So yeah, this here's an example of what we're just talking about, where you have a build YAML file on your top level. So this is analyzed by the SourceGen package. This is essentially what it's saying here. And the option is to set type lint to ignore for the file, which is quite cool. So if you've got generators, that might be a nice thing. I'll post that link to the file in the chat if anyone's interested. All right, let's move on. I think we've got lots more questions. And again, just for everyone, get your questions in the chat with a Q in front. And our question magician, Randall, who's in the background, will dig out your questions and bring them to us. So that's awesome.
Yeah, right. Sounds good. And I'm going to need to run fairly soon, but we shall see here. All right, moving on.
Next question.
In my layout, I have a widget on the stack that's floating, and in the back, there are some widgets that should have the same height as the floating widget. How can I make both widgets have the same height? Lots of ways. If you're using a positioned, they both have height and width, and you can feed them in with a parameter.
I think
other ways.
Hang on. There's actually, I see the problem, but there's also some constraints that are missing here in terms of how we can explain to best solve this, right? If you want both widgets to have the same sign, they're floating on and they're stacked on top of each other, wrap each one in position.fill, essentially, right? But it can get kind of complicated because of depending on how the constraints are coming down. So you kind of position.fill probably wrapped around every element that's inside your stack. Every child that's in your stack is probably going to solve your problem. You can get into some problems if your constraints want the exact size, because position.fill is basically saying be as big as the stack, and the stack is saying be as big as the children. So there's kind of like these two composing kind of opposite constraints happening. It can get funky if you're not careful.
You'd have to set one of them specifically, right? You'd set size on one, and then the rest would follow.
Yeah. Normally, what you want to do is have the size be one, and then have the position.fill will then fill whatever that one of them is sized to. I believe you can do it on all of them, and I believe that will work, but it depends on the constraints coming down from the parent to the stack. There is another solution to this, and it's a really simple one. Well, I say really simple. It's definitely simple, but custom multi-child layout is a widget that you give it a layout delegate, and then you can just say lay out these two widgets smack bang on top of each other, and you can ask it to get the intrinsic sizes. You can do whatever you want with that. However, it does mean that both custom single child layout and custom multi-child layout both have to fill the space that they occupy. You cannot have them not do that, where stack you can. So a stack can actually have an intrinsic height and intrinsic width, where a custom multi-child layout can't, I believe. Yeah. All right. Hopefully it helps.
All right.
Try it out. Let us know.
Is it possible to show 4.5, 5.5, or 6.5 items in a list view, meaning how to handle the false bottom in the list view or achieve a logical ending in list view? I think that means so that the user knows there's something down there.
Yeah, I've run into this, and I don't have a good solution for it. But I've definitely run into where you want to have like half a line, to show so they know that there's something to scroll with.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking, what about using a builder to find the constraint?
Yeah.
I have a gist for this. I'm sure I agree. I remember doing this exact thing, and you can actually do it with aspect ratios inside aspect ratios. So you put an aspect ratio around your list view, and then each child has an aspect ratio in it. And
I remember that. I think I've got it here somewhere. But in essence, it's like if you do an aspect ratio of 1:3, and then you put 3 items in it with an aspect ratio of 1:1. Although if you want to make sure there's an overlap, you can use an aspect ratio for your list view, and then an aspect ratio for your list item, and make sure they don't match.
Yeah, but basically, we're talking about things like wrapping text, for example. You don't know. I mean, I'm not sure that works for that.
No, it does. I mean, it means you're limiting the size of the list view items to so you have 4.5 on the screen, right? You can do that, but just with aspect ratios without actually measuring. So the only way to say I want 4.5 items to say on the screen going vertically is either you do it with aspect ratio, which means it's implicit based on its size, which means it's guaranteed. That's always going to be the case because you can make sure that the two aspects are a ratio of each other to output 4.5 items. Or the only other way to do that is to wrap it in a layout builder. Mm-hmm. You get the height divided by 4.5 that gives you the height of each item, and you set that as a size box within the responsive list views item builder. But again, that's exactly the same thing, but you're now taking the manual approach of doing a list view builder, right? Rather than implicit behavior with aspect ratio. But
the Viking duck has a problem.
Agree that it is definitely. I'd see what you're saying though, Danielle, in terms of that you can't have the items be however big they want to be.
Right. That's my point.
Right. Yeah. And that is some of these things. Like we mentioned this before on scrolling. It's the same problem we have on all scrolling in terms of you go down. It's like when you scroll, you say, I want to scroll down 100 items. Now it has to lay out 100 items to know exactly where to scroll to. And it's the same problem with this. You can't say, I want 4.5 items, but each item is a different size because there's no guarantee that puzzle is going to solve itself, right?
You have to make all the items the same size for this, and that brings up a different question.
Yeah, but
they can actually be a different size based on the device, though, right? So even if you have like a desktop app and you're resizing it, you can be guaranteed that it's going to change. Also, you can change that breakpoint. That's another thing. You could say it's 4.5 on mobile and it's 10.5 on tablet, or based on the screen size, you change the number of items you have on the screen. Both of these things actually is what Grid View Delegate Builder does. There is actually, I think there's a List View Delegate Builder for this as well. I think you can, if I remember rightly. Bear with me, I can't remember. I know the Grid View one definitely does have it, and that's your max extent. Grid View Delegate allows you to also say, okay, at 300 pixels, if it gets smaller than that, then it will start wrapping them. So you've been guaranteed that you're always going to get between X amount and X amount on the screen based on the size.
Yeah, but I know when I run into this problem, because designers have asked me for it, it's definitely been cases where my items are not the same. Some of the text will wrap. If it's long enough, it'll wrap, and so they just wanted to make sure that from that standpoint. So that's a little bit harder.
The thing here, right, is a lot of the layouts. You have contradicting constraints a lot of the time. So you have behaviors that you want to multiple different ways the UI can behave, and each of them contradict each other. In the sense, you have to pick one and go with it. Or have some sort of breakpoint where you're choosing one or another mechanism of displaying your widgets or behavior of your widgets. That's kind of vague, kind of random. Sorry, but yeah, hopefully it helps. All right.
Okay, I am hitting my stop, unfortunately. I'm expected elsewhere. You all have a great show. Randall, we need to fill in.
Randall, to the stage.
I don't know if you can hear that.
How many hours you're back?
All righty. Well, you have a good one, and I will catch you all later.
All right. Have a good one. All right, let's carry on with some questions here.
Actually, I will come in just for a second because I did want to have a comment. I put it in the chat, but on that last one, couldn't you also do a sliver list, which can tell where it is in the scroll? And if the item is partially off the bottom of the scroll, have it automatically apply a gradient? Wouldn't that work? The slivers have sensitivity to slivers are special.
You could still, they're vaguely special. You can do that. You can still have that same behavior with normal box children. You just have to monitor the scroll controller. And you can also you can actually wrap. You can use sliver layout constraints, wrap it in a sliver to box adapter, and achieve very similar effects where you can monitor the current paint extent and choose to say if your widget is going to go over, add a gradient, and some other fun things.
Okay, that was just my comment. I'm going to go back just watching questions.
There's definitely. You can stick around if you want to, Randall.
No, it's fine. That's fine. I'm operating on so little sleep that I'm afraid I'm going to say something stupid. So it'd be better to have me just behind the scenes for at least the rest of today. Maybe I'll come back later when you start live coding. It'll be fun. All right.
By the way, just to say, Danielle, John, Remi, if you need to head off, let us know. Like there's no requirement for you to be around for the entire show. But sometimes we do go on a bit. We'll try and keep it short though today. Right, the next question. Let's carry on. Best way to log things in Flutter. I don't want to use any external package. Is it efficient to log Flutter to use Flutter's log in diff static functions in a custom logging class with K mode debug mode check? I'm not sure what you mean. Flutter's log. There's an interesting thing that you can do, and that is you can actually use run zoned and override the print function, and it means that your print statements throughout your application that are called within that zone, you can actually wrap them in a K debug check and have them not appear in the release build. And that's essentially what most of these logging things do. You call a logging function in the release version. They don't just put the output into the default log behavior. But also, there's other things you might want to do. So a lot of logging things, like you might capture the last 10 log statements or 50 log statements that have been output by your application. And then when your crash occurs, you can then submit those log lines with your application. So you have an idea of what the user was doing, what actions they were doing before the crash occurred. But there's no requirement to use an external package. It's pretty straightforward to do these kind of things without one. If the packages exist to give you lots of functionality, but if you only have a small subset of functionality, well, it's straightforward enough.
I have a bias a lot of times not to using a package because I want to know what's going on and control it. But that's the thing that makes me curious right off the bat is why don't you want to use an external package? What's going on in your mind with that? Because anyway, that's just kind of my thought there.
If it's going to do what you want,
yeah.
What's the reason to not use it?
Like I said, I'm skeptical a lot of times, and so I don't use as many packages as maybe a lot of people would. But that said, logging is something that has been solved pretty well. And if it's because you want to do it yourself and you want to learn it, then go look at the package.
Right.
So.
Yep.
So I did briefly touch on the run zoned idea there, and I do want to just quickly cover a little bit on that.
That is a really cool idea, by the way. I had not heard that.
I've used it before. The zones have their set of problems, and they're not for the faint of heart. They can be complicated. But I will just touch on this briefly right now. So I'm going to bring this up larger. In the Dart async packages where this is handled, you get on.
It's kind of funny because I'm actually using the run zone thing is in custom lint to redirect prints into log files to help developers debug their applications.
Well, there you go. But it's kind of interesting what you can do because you can actually specify your own custom values. These values are linked to the isolate, and it's kind of running off the zone within the isolate. Think of it like zones are chained, but I won't go into the details about this. But they actually suggest that you use run zone guarded for errors. But anyway, the difference here is this zone specification. This specifies how you want to do it. Now, if you use zone.fork, which is the default way, which takes the current configuration and lets you change just the behavior that you want with the specified. But here you've got all those lovely handlers, and this is how those sort of inbuilt tasks. So, and here's the print handler right here. So when you call the print function, it actually runs this here in the zone to do whatever logging was. When you create a periodic timer, when you create a normal timer, when you schedule a microtask, these are all of those kind of fun things that occur. And especially even when you have an uncaught, this is how the error handlers work when you get an uncaught exception handle. And this is where you get the error and the stack trace from the error occur. So you can do your own logging this way. This is kind of probably not just log statements, but also, when you get error occur, and you can fire that off to your own API, you can do whatever you want. We won't go into like all these, but these have other reasons to exist. But I think I'm under the impression that they're trying to simplify the zone handling at the moment. Because it can get rather complicated and there's very specific use case in there. I think that's one of the reasons why they've deprecated the use of on error with run zoned, and they now have run zone guarded, which adds some extra handling for when errors occur. Anyway, so yes, in short, to answer the last question, you can do your own logging if you want to. Here's a question for the panel here: what logging package would you use if you were to use one? Do you have a preference?
Yeah, what am I using?
I'm looking at the same reason.
Because I know Fimba is quite popular. One people like Fimba, which is basically Timber, which is a package on Android that was converted for Flutter. It's called Fimber, Fimber. There's Logger and Logging, which are two other ones that I've used.
One of those is what I'm using.
I think I'm using Logger in one of my apps.
Because I know
logging. Logging, yeah.
So the official that logging. I'm just going to check this right now before I speak out of turn. But a logging, I believe, is the package made by the Dart team for logging in all their things. Dart.dev logging. I'm just looking at this now. There you go. So yeah, this is like by the Dart team, Dart.dev. And this is kind of like an example. It does hierarchical logging, but basically this is how you set up. You set what level you want to log at, and then when you get a record come through, you can then choose what you want to do with that record information. And then when you log something, you do you create a logger instance, and you do log it with a name like a tag, and then on that logger you can then say .warning.shout.info. There's some examples in here somewhere. So you create your logger and .fine, which basically does this level fine log, but you have .info, .warning, .severe, and you can kind of like there you go. You can kind of like log what you want. I don't know. There's a ton of ways of doing it, but that's kind of like a really basic one. But nice about this is that it's hierarchical, so that you can disable it in certain hierarchies, enable it in others. It has a lot of functionality around that. It's probably a bit much for a lot of projects. Logger is another popular one, which is, I think, I mentioned here, which is, again, same thing. You create a logger instance. You can then log.d, log.e. These are very common things. D for debug, E for error. And then it gives you these nice, like, little errors that come out in your log. There you go. V, verbose, debug, info, warning level. And WTF, of course, for the emergencies that you need to do. But yeah, there you go. So it's got some filtering, some pretty printing, and you can override how it behaves, capturing the output and like logging it to a server instead in production. These things are quite common. They're also not too difficult to implement yourself. It's always good to. The other thing to say, like we do talk about this, right? The other thing to mention here is try building something like it doesn't have to be you using an app, but try building it yourself. because then that gives you a better fundamental understanding of how these things are made and how you would accomplish one of these things. And when you go choose a package, you're better informed to know which package you want to solve your problem, right? So yeah, I'm sure Remi's built his own fair share of rewrites of people's packages. When he goes, this one doesn't do what I want it to do, I'm going to build my own.
Yeah, but I often don't publish them though. Just try to
support them then. Right. All right, moving on. For backend, is Dart a good choice and any best package for Dart for backend?
I think we've answered this one every week.
I mean, there's several packages around at the moment, and I don't know if I'd say there's a best package because they've each got their own pros and cons. Shelf has always been around since day one. Shelf is by the Dart team, and it's a wrapper around the HTTP server, and sort of lets you handle the requests and responses and do middleware and all that kind of fun stuff. Very similar to Express.js, Express libraries for Node, but and there's tons of packages on Pub that are extensions for Shelf, like different types of handlers and middlewares and all sorts. So that's kind of a nice go-to. The Dart Frog, I believe Dart Frog is built on top of Shelf, or at least has a Shelf handler, and that's a great alternative. There's also Serverpod. Serverpod is another one that's quite popular right now. And there's a ton of older packages. Aqueduct was replaced with Aqueduct was originally a package that was done. It's got a different name now. It was closed. The package manager didn't want to maintain it anymore, and then some people in the community sort of picked up Aqueduct, and I don't remember what it was now. But I can quickly find it.
Randall's saying Conduit.
Conduit, that's it. Conduit. Sorry, yeah. Is Aqueduct still around, or is Conduit the replacement, or have I just mixed things up? Yeah, Aqueduct is gone, and Conduit is the replacement. Yeah, the Conduit, I think it's called the Conduit. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Anyone else got any other suggestions? Is it Invitays?
Yeah.
We made one at Invitays. We made a package at Invitays for backends, which is called Target. You can use that too.
You've also got one for Edge servers, haven't you? For Supabase, isn't it? That's still experimental, I think.
Yeah, there's this one too.
I mean, I've not used any of these Dart backend packages. Of the rest of you?
I've used Conduit before and Aqueduct to quite good results. I can't spell Conduit apparently. I'll find it. Oh, there we go.
I threw the link in the chat. Yeah.
Oh, you got there before me. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So this is one. I really wish. I've tried this out. I do like it. However, the results can't be ahead of time compiled because it uses some reflection, some other things, but it will work. There's definitely pros and cons to a lot of these different packages, and I think just try them out. But for me personally, Shelf has just done fine, and there's lots of packages for it, and it's adequate for most cases. You can set up API. You can set up routers. There's a Shelf router package, and you can set up lots of different API handlers and kind of all your middleware and everything else you want to do. Yeah. Has anyone else tried doing server-side Dart? No.
That's why I asked.
Well, I'd say check out. I see you saying this all the time. It's a shameless self-plug, but check out the Boring Show. I did a 3-part Boring Show with Craig on using Shelf and on backend with Google Cloud and with Docker, and it's like really quick and we get server up and running within 1 hour on the first show, and then I think the second hour we actually did WebSockets and fanning out of responses to multiple clients, all within 3 shows. So it's kind of like basic to advanced. Try and do it as quick as you can live. It's always fun. Right, moving on. Next question, I guess. Randall, you should let me know when we're calling it into questions because I have no idea. I'm not keeping track. Right.
How can we do this in Flutter? Outside of Flutter, app URL, open project, and navigate to specific screen. Oh, so this is So this is just a deep link.
Deep linking, yeah.
Yeah. So I think what you're looking for is deep. First of all, what you're looking for is deep linking, right? That's probably what you're missing the name of it. Deep linking can be complicated if you're not careful. You'll find some. There's definitely some options there. Firebase has one called dynamic links, which might or might not be what you want. To be honest, I've not really been a fan of Firebase dynamic links. It does solve some things like it does this. Opens up a web page, and if it detects you don't have the app installed, it will take you to like the Play Store and the Apple App Store and things like that. Which is kind of nice and helpful. So you have to do it yourself. There's also, I mean, a lot of the time, what you probably want to do is when you share a link, you share a HTTP website link, and if they don't have the app installed, it directs them to your website. And on your website, you have buttons that say install the app on the Play Store, install that app. Keep it super simple then. So you're just sharing a URL, which you use with the share package for Share Plus, right? And then when it receives the deep links, there's a package called Unilinks. This one I've used. I'll bring that up on stream. And that I've used to really great success. I'll bring it up on stream and I'll pop the link in the chat here. Unilinks. And this is, it goes through a guide and explains what permission you do and what you need to change and how it works. So you need to make some changes to your Android manifest to do Android and what change you need to do to make it work on iOS and all the different things you need to do in there, steps on how to do it, so on and so forth. But once you've done those things, inside your Flutter app, it becomes pretty simple. It just becomes essentially this. So somewhere you get your initial link that was opened up with your app, and then you can like navigate to that page or do whatever you want. So you can do this like have a feature builder before that loads it and pass it into your application or something. I don't know. There's lots of ways. And then there's actually a stream so that whilst your app is running, if you get a link come through. So this is about when your app is in the background. So let's say on Android, you just home the application, it goes into the background. The app is still active. It's still listening to that stream. And then if you tap on a link and send a messaging app, it will bring your app to the foreground and send the link down the stream. So you might be on like a certain page of the application, you get the link come through. But in terms of like navigating, which is the other half of the story, so receiving the link is one. Navigating is how you do that is based on how you set up your navigation inside your app. So I would say go router, and then with go router, you can then just go to this route and just be the end part of the URL or something, and away you go.
My big issue with that kind of a thing, I mean, Go Router works great for that, and there's other network, but yeah. But the issue I've kind of got is when you have something that's maybe behind an authentication, how do you go get yourself authenticated and not lose your spot? So that once you're authenticated, it brings you right back to that in that kind of a scenario. And I've tried several things. I've made stuff work, but I've not been super happy with any of my solutions with that.
Well, I mean, it's kind of that temporal state, right? So you get your deep link, and it's the same thing that happens when you go to same thing. We go to a website, right? When you go to a website, and you from a deep link. Let's say you get linked to like a GCP project page somewhere deep in like the set of screens, and you're not logged in, or you're logged into the wrong account. You then change your account, you log in, and then it directs you back to the page that you actually wanted to be logged in on. Essentially, the way that works is either it adds an extra parameter saying, where you're trying to get to the URL, or it puts it in a cookie session, and when you log in, it then tries it again. But yeah, it's at least Go Router has a redirect function at the top level. So if you're not logged out, you can then say store it in my local state inside my app level widget, or whatever's got my router, and then once you're logged in again, you can say direct to it, right? But there's a lot of moving pieces to making it like spot on perfect, but it really does depend on how you build your app or how you want to interact with your app. Also, you need to think about these are like what you call permalinks, right? So when you share a deep link, you have to make sure it's always available. There is, if you're doing HTTP links, you have to add some files to your websites, for example. That's all explained in these documentations, but you have to, so that the operating system knows that you can't just take accept links from anyone else's website, right? Like it looped up. Anyway, there's whole stuff around Apple verification with that is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this now. Sorry, I'm on this topic, but there's associated links JSON file, something like that, associated app links JSON file, and they say it has to be a JSON return MIME type, but the file name does not have .json. So no default web server will serve it like that. You have to like special configurations to make it work, which is super annoying. Like HD access with like extra header stuff for Apache or something. I don't know. It's just ridiculous. But there are valid. I will say this: whenever you deal with deep links, there are validators online. You give them your deep link, and it will validate the deep link would work with your. It will give you your package name and your signing key, and it will tell you if it works for you. And same for iOS, like it will validate that your server is returning back the right information. But there's a lot of pieces to doing it. It's there's a lot of guides as well. There's actually some third-party services that literally they just do deep links. You add their library, you add their library, and you use their service, and they just try and deal with it all for you, and they give you like a myapp.link URL or something, very similar to dynamic links. Because dynamic links works that way. You share a link from Firebase, like they give you like a unique URL. You don't actually share your website. You can make a subdomain. And if it's Firebase hosted, you can make it a subdirectory. But anyway. Sorry, too much info, right? Question 2: is there a way to connect Facebook Ads Pixel with Flutter project to collect audience and retarget them in ads? Yes. So in short, you could. I probably wouldn't. Not inside your Flutter project. I mean, you just integrate it inside the Android project and the iOS project files, and then you would just add like an extra view to your layout, and you can do that. You can do some custom layouts for Android, for example. So you have your Facebook ad view along with the Flutter view in the Android layout, and the same for like the Swift layout. So you can add like a Facebook advert, spot or pixel or whatever for the analytics. You cannot service it within your Flutter layouts. If you do that, you'll come a cropper of their terms and conditions for fake clicks, and you'll get your account banned. So do not put ads, especially ad views, inside Flutter's platform views, because they essentially, the way they do it is they make a view behind the scenes hidden, and then they make all the clicks and stuff come through to Flutter, and then so it's like same as a Webview, where you put Webview inside Flutter. The Webview is not actually on the screen; it's off screen, and it kind of brings it the image of it to the screen, which is kind of considered faking like clicks. And you can if there's not an official package from Facebook for this, I don't know if there is. If there's not an official package, then don't make your own custom package for this, or don't use anyone else's custom package, because it will get your Facebook account banned. I can tell you that right now. I've seen it happen before. Don't do it. You will regret it.
By the way, Randall says that we probably should cut off questions now.
Oh, time to cut off questions. So I tell you what, we'll give you 5 more minutes. Get your questions in now, and then that's it. Then it's cut off. I'm looking at the time. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Yeah. So in short, yes, you can, but it's all custom, right? You need to know how to do it in Android, how to do it in iOS. And yeah, you can't put it inside your Flutter layouts. All right. There is it's very specific, because there's the same problem happened around AdMob for Google's ad network stuff, and they had to make their own package, and then like whitelist their own package so that it can be used with Flutter, and that took some time for them to do that. So unless if you want to display ads in your app, you can do the Google AdMob network stuff. So, but yeah, it's complicated. Power Droid. Remi, I like to put a Hive database in a provider using Riverpod 2, so that it can be accessed throughout the app. Is this good practice? And do you have any tips on how to accomplish it?
Sure. It's hard a bit for me to wrap my hand around it since I haven't used Hive. But I don't see why that would be an issue.
I don't think Hive requires a context. So you just create, what's it, like a state provider, right?
No, just a provider, I suppose. And I guess it depends on what Hive exposes you. Like maybe it requires some initialization somewhere, so you might have to use a future provider instead. And maybe it exposes some streams to listen to changes on your specific queries you make. So you might want to use a stream provider. I can't be any more specific than this since I haven't used it. But I'm sure you can find some answers on the various discussions around Riverpod, or maybe join the Discord and ask questions there. I'm sure someone will help you.
Randall.
Exactly.
I think there's also, like, it might be worth reaching out to Hive. Is Hive? Who does Hive? It was.
I believe it's Simon. It's not you.
now. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, well, you have Hive is the old one, right?
Mm.
And then
ISAR
is the new.
ISAR is the one that I prefer, and I would recommend ISAR over Hive personally. Yeah. But Hive is I think it's Bono Fire Software. Was it the one in Amsterdam? I think it was them. I might be speaking out of turn. I just can't remember, and I've done it. I could just look it up, couldn't I? That would be really helpful. HiveDB. HiveDB.dev. Can I get any more information than that? Munich, Germany. No, I'm completely off. Oh no, it is. It's Simon. Simon Lula did work on it. Yeah. But ISAR is I think I'd say is the next sort of way to go. If people don't know what we're talking about, I'll quickly pop a link to ISAR in the chat, and you should check it out. Oh, wrong one. Yeah. Right, next question, I guess. Power through. I see the new Keep Alive Link API. How to implement lifecycle for one provider that depends on one other provider. Example: a provider storage HWT token dispose of all dependent providers.
I mean, that's the natural behavior of providers if you're using ref.watch. So technically, if you want a provider to be disposed when the provider exposing the token changes, just ref.watch that provider, and when the token changes, it will automatically be destroyed. And
just ref.watch, basically.
Yeah. It kind of depends on how you combine things. Generally, combining things with ref.watch is the best approach in a way, because it does things for you. Otherwise, if you're not using ref.watch, maybe you're using ref.listen, and you can call ref.invalidate self in the dependent provider to forcibly update yourself. There are many ways to do this.
So what is Keep Alive Link used for then?
It's kind of unrelated. Keep Alive Link is related to providers destroying themselves if they aren't used anymore.
And then you're keeping the data.
It's an implementation. Yeah, it's an implementation detail of the ref.keepalive method, which allows you to keep a provider alive even if it's not used anymore.
Cool. It reminds me of Keep Alive, and not to be mixed up with Keep Alive inside the framework itself, right? Because that keeps widgets alive.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's using this name, actually.
Follow-up question on that was, I see that on cancel, but I mean, if I open page in and out too much, it will cause memory leak because the on cancel in the previous is still listening to the JWT provider's provided disposed.
I suppose they're talking about keep alive link.onConsole.
I guess so.
Cancel, just cancel. Oh no, ref.onConsole, I believe. But I mean, it sounds like you're asking about keep alive, but keep alive doesn't sound related to the question, so there's likely some misunderstanding here. So I'm not really sure how to answer this properly.
I mean,
maybe join Discord and we can continue here.
Yeah, I think it needs follow up. Join the Discord. Wait, next one. Oh, is that the Flutter? Do you mean just the normal Flutter Discord, or is it actually a Riverpod one?
I guess both. The Riverpod one would likely be more specific.
Yeah.
But I kind of read both. I'm more active on the Riverpod one, though.
All right. I have a few more questions to get through. With annotate at Riverpod, I have two types of loading. One is starting the page. The other is submitting the page. How can I know which async loading is the right one?
I'm not sure which two types of loading are you talking about, because async loading only
I think he's saying that he's got
right.
I think but he's got so basically saying he's got two different responses coming back. Starting the page and then submitting the page. So two asynchronous tasks he's trying to do, and how can you know which async loading is the right one to use? I guess. I mean, you can just order results. I mean, is this because you're using when, right? Because I'm supposed if you're using when, you're only using one at a time because you're being completely on.
I mean, if it's about two different tasks, I mean, technically you'd likely want to handle both, but for different situations, like the starting page would be showing a big spinner on the page until the page is loaded. Whereas for the submit one, maybe you want to show a spinner only on the submit button and keep the content of the page available.
Right.
Yeah, I suppose so. So for instance, you could do it in different widgets with the sort of the when. Is it when, isn't it? Syntax of like.
Yes. I mean, technically with Dart 3, maybe Dart 3, maybe you could use pattern matching too. You don't necessarily have to use when anymore at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, when.
I suppose there's also like you could just do an if statement and say if async loading, if the first async loading is true and the second async loading is, or the second async loading is true, and show a spinner or something like that, right?
You can definitely do this.
You can also wrap that behavior in a widget, and then you could use it across your application, right?
I recommend more doing an extension for this on async value if you want to make commonly reusable when cases.
No, I just mean like in terms of like displaying a loader for several things or something in the visual stuff. But yeah.
Maybe.
I can't tell you how much I enjoy seeing Simon say something and then watching Remi just sit there and think to say, okay, do I agree with this or not? That's awesome. I love it.
It's great. Cool. Let's next question, I guess. Let's go. Jean Martin says, yesterday I saw on Twitter that the Riverpod documentation was not updated to the latest version. How true is that? I'm going to start learning Riverpod. I have good reference. Thanks, Remi.
On the Riverpod.dev is kind of out of date, you could say. There is a work in progress documentation, which is if you go to Riverpod.dev, there is a link on top of every page redirecting you to the work in progress one. So it's docs.v2.riverpod.dev, something like that. This one is relatively up to date. There are still some issues I need to deal with here. But yeah, the documentations are in an ideal state. Unfortunately, I don't really like working on documentations, which is why they're kind of out of date.
So what you're saying is you're going to accept PRs for documentation, is what you're saying?
Exactly. Lots of people actually have done that. I don't remember the name, sadly, but so many people have done it. So it's in a decent state at the moment. The docs.v2 link is relatively all right. You can, the docs.v2 enables you to either enable or disable code generation if you want. So like if you don't like code generation in Riverpod, you can disable it on the sidebar and the documentation won't show it anymore. It will just show the usual syntax. Same things for hooks. So I know these are slightly controversial, which is why I made this feature about enabling and disabling them.
Cool. All right, let's move on. Oh, same one. Next one. What are the things to remember when Dockerizing a Flutter app? Can you Dockerize an actual Flutter app, or do you mean like a Dart code?
Yeah, it would have to be Dart code, not an app.
I mean, you could. I mean, theoretically, you could Dockerize any app, right? Like, you just need to put all the dependencies for it in the Docker container.
So, well, I guess maybe a desktop app.
I mean, I know the Linux apps are Dockerized in the sense that they use containers, don't they? Use Snap.
Yeah,
One things to remember: don't do anything you shouldn't do. I don't know. I can't really think of anything you shouldn't explicitly do. Anyone?
This question may also be about Dockerizing a dev environment for Flutter, which does have utility value, which would be like, for example, I don't have Linux on my box. It's a Mac, but I can have a Docker thing that has all the Flutter development environment for Linux. So
sure, but you still need to run that container on a Linux environment. Like,
no, you can run it on a Mac. It runs just fine.
Okay.
So you have the entire setup. You have a copy of your Flutter distro and all the Flutter tools inside the Docker container.
Yeah, actually, I've been considering doing that in some projects to deal with what's the word, golden test, to make sure they're kind of like shared between environments, like consistent. They tend to break often.
Wasn't Vagrant the tool used for this kind of stuff?
Vagrant also is a virtual machine system. You could also use
there's a Vagrant Flutter environment for exactly this. Yeah, I thought there was.
Oh, nice. And there's also you could also use unless they've ruined it already, VirtualBox. Clearly, that would work.
Yeah.
VirtualBox still runs on my box. Yeah, Oracle hasn't figured out how to kill that yet. I'm glad I don't think they know they have it.
Don't tell them. Shush.
Yeah, no. They killed everything else that came from Sun. Why not that?
VirtualBox is really used quite a lot, and I use it as well. It's a really great tool.
Yes, very slick.
Right. Where are we? No, final few questions.
Oh, this is for Remi.
Package name nested, functional _ widget, help shorten the code. Is it good? Functional can have making the UI code more readable and shortened, but I don't know which one is good. Please give some thanks. Please give some advice on which kind of functional package is good.
Nested is a bit controversial, I would say. I mean, technically both are controversial, but I wouldn't quite recommend using nested at this point. It has some issues with impacting quite harshly the length of the widget tree you can have, because it's basically working by adding extra widgets in the widget tree to allow this linear syntax. But if you're using a lot of widgets, you can hit a Stack Overflow error because of a device limitation. So I tend to discourage using it for minor stuff. Functional widget, it's all right. It needs a bit of love, to be honest. It's likely, like before we have metaprogramming, I would understand if you don't use it. You might want to wait for metaprogramming, honestly. Basically. If you really wanted to use it, of course, use it. But I know it's a bit controversial. Like if you're working on teams, they might not like it.
Am I right in thinking that Nest is basically like multi-provider? So basically, it just flattens down that hierarchy when you're building it, but then when it actually uses it, inflates it essentially and nests them. I mean, I feel like old-fashioned because I like seeing all this stuff, and I suppose it depends on how you use these things. Anyway, right.
Yeah.
I don't think I have got any specific package that I would suggest. Anyone else? No. All right, moving on. Which one is better? Future either failures or stream get stream, or stream either failure stream or any other format.
I mean, it kind of circle back to the previous questions, right? About error handling in the application. We had one earlier.
So I'm trying to remember where the either comes from. Is it functional Dart, F Dart, or Dart? What's it called?
Yeah.
F sharp Dart. Yeah.
I mean, you can make your own.
You can make your own. Yeah. It's basically you're just saying you hit your left and your right. So you got failure and stream of string in that first example, and you're saying it could be either this or this, and then there's actually functions there that say is it a failure or is it a stream, basically, and then based on the condition of which one of this thing it is, it's returned. I'm kind of curious because with Dart 3 either might become completely. You can have like sealed classes now and some other things. So with the pattern matching and records, you probably this sort of thing might go away, right? In terms of explicitly naming it like that, but future either failure or string. So basically saying like, do you want a future that returns? And I mean, like the problem here is this semantically they're different, right? Mm-hmm. So the first example is you're saying you've got a function called getStream, which is asynchronous, so it returns a future, and it can fail or return a stream, right? So on the actual get call itself, it can fail or return a stream, where that means that building the stream can fail, right? Whereas the second one is you're returning a stream, and then each response on the stream can either fail or return a string. So they are different things, right?
Yeah.
Not which one is better; they're just different, right?
I suppose
it depends on your depends on your UI, right? So there's certain things that there's certain things like I said, like stream provider and other things like that in Riverpod and so on, which depend on a stream. So having that second case probably might make it more compatible. Stream builder, various other things that take a stream, right? And then you've got the type after that, either failure or string is probably more flexible. Go on, sorry, Remi.
I was going to say real quick, and then Remi will tell us the right answer anyway. But to me, it depends on who decides whether it's a failure or not. I mean, if it's a stream is the one, if a failure means that there's something wrong with the stream has had something, it's considered to be a failure, then the stream needs to return the either part. But if it's something outside of that that's determining it's a failure, then why would you want to push that needing to know that into the stream? Anyway, go ahead, Remi. Sorry.
For me, I was about to say, I suppose it's about what do you think is better for error handling in general. But I would say I'd likely pick neither of these and just go with string without the either and without the future before it. Because technically streams already have the error handling part. And so you would delegate the error handling to a higher layer of your architecture. So like if you're using stream provider, it already deals with it, so you don't need the either at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, right, as you said, like streams already have error handling. Like, just continue to that. Because the thing is, you have to remember that if an exception is thrown, then it's going to come down on your stream as an error anyway. No matter, if it's thrown outside of your capture for either, then it's going to be, you're going to have to do with both error conditions then, right? Mm-hmm. So does that mean that's the first one we're saying then, right? So I don't know why it says, why it has to be a future of either. I'm not sure why it has to be a future of either, but I suppose if you were to wrap the stream like that, no, you're still like not accounting for the fact that the stream can return an error, right? And then you could wrap your stream with something that captures the errors and then converts it to an either.
It sounds redundant at this point.
It does. It just sounds It just sounds.
You would never expect.
Overly complicated.
You would never expect a function which returns a future or a string to sometime throw. Like, I would say it's a bug if the function does that.
Yeah. Well, this is actually, to be honest, like just to actually have a function that is a future that returns a stream is kind of a bit like, do you really want that? Is that really what like the expected behavior? Because I mean, like a future can return an error, stream can return an error. Like it gets like they're both asynchronous in their own rights. I think a lot of the time people find it interesting. People find it difficult to understand that you can return a stream, and you can create a stream controller, right? Or I don't know, behavior subject, whatever. But you can just return that immediately whilst you're going off and do something asynchronous to return the result back on the stream like a completer, right? But you can return. There's ways of doing that without there being like a need for a future in front of a stream. You can always return back a stream immediately. Hell, I mean, even async star functions return a stream by default, and that's it. It just magically works. You don't have to think about a stream controller or anything. You just yield your results back, and you're done. All right. I think star is underused. It's underused. Same as await for. That's underutilized.
Yeah. The only thing I dislike with async star is that it tends to stop the function at the first exception.
Yeah, because you can try catch inside, can't you? So you could try catch, but then
you cannot emit the error if you try catch it.
Yeah, you can't emit multiple errors, right?
Yeah, we're missing a yield error somehow. I guess you could say yield star string error. So I suppose it gets.
But you could do this. You could yield an either. Right, let's move on. Right, let's go. All right, last question here: how to listen to events in a Webview inside our app? You have a JavaScript interface. So there's a thing inside the Webview package that lets you define the JavaScript interface. You would set that, and basically you get messages. You can get messages back or functions call back into your Flutter code from your JavaScript. So an event happens in your Webview inside the JavaScript code, and you emit that back to your application of the JavaScript channel. It's all documented. Does that help? That's how I would probably do it. Right? I mean, I guess if you don't own the web page you're trying to load in the Webview, then you can inject JavaScript into the page. That's another thing you can do. You can evaluate JavaScript inside the web page. It kind of gets a bit dodgy. Yeah, you want to be careful with that. Like, again, like if you don't own the website, then they change the website, it breaks your code, right? It breaks your app. It's not a great position to be in. Is anything from anyone else? I mean, I kind of just answered that one. No,
pretty much no. I mean, I've done iframe stuff before, and you listen to events there, but I don't really have anything to add. I don't think for this.
It's pretty much the same sort of thing, right? You're listing whatever events happening in the normal sort of life cycle of the website. You can then emit over the JavaScript channel. Yeah. All right then. That's the end of all the questions. However, stick around because I think Randall's going to come back. Hey, there he is.
Yeah, fine. And I did have a question for Remi before we let him get away.
Oh,
no, you're good.
Am I?
No.
Am I? I thought I was speaking. Am I not speaking? Am I okay now? Yes?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay, good.
That's
all right. I could hear me, so that seemed to work. That was the important part. I was just going to say, so one of the things I'm asked a lot is comparing Block and Riverpod in terms of their sort of fundamental technologies. And one of the differences that's come about in a number of conversations I've had with people is the idea of state management using streams. And for me, it seems like mostly what you want to do when you have state management is you really only ever want the value now. You don't want the value that was just before this or the before that, unless what you're trying to do is create maybe an event log. But that's typically not how people want to use a state manager. They simply want to have get a value from somewhere that's app state and then know when it changes. Now, Remi, I know you've said some words about this. Am I confused, or is this a reasonable stance to take? And what do you have to say on it?
Yeah, I suppose you're referring to the fact that I don't like using strings for state management. My general stance on the topic is that I get the appeal for using them because they're part of the Dart SDK. So it's like it's right here. You want to use this thing right here. But I believe they tend to come with a lot of baggage, you could say, and a lot of potential difficulties you could deal with, like making sure that when you push a new page, the new page has access to the previous value emitted on the stream. So for that, you may have to resort to using Eric star, behavior subjects, things like those. So basically my stance is that with strings, there is a lot of things you could get wrong, and chances are we can do a lot simpler by just starting from scratch again and removing a lot of potential mistakes we can do. There are way too many things for me to explain here because there are a lot of subtleties, but I'm actually considering making a talk on it about ranting on strings for like 30 minutes. Could actually do it one day.
I think that's a perfect opportunity to just quickly segue into something here. There's a call for papers now open.
Yeah.
See how I did there? If you have a suggestion for a paper just like that, like Remi, he can now submit that talk to followthecard.dev. And and there's a section for a call for papers, and we're accepting them in 5th and 7th of Berlin. And the tickets are now open, so if you want to come, go get your tickets. There you go. See what I did there? Anyway.
Nice transition.
nice segue.
Trying to get that in there before the show. Yeah.
Yep.
So
we're done with questions.
We're done with questions. We'll do a bit of live coding in a second if you want. We're going to have a play around with some of the new features of Dart 3, I think.
Cool.
Patterns and all that kind of fun stuff. So let me see if I can load up an IDE whilst.
I think I need to get back to my day job.
All right, Danielle. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me as always. And I may miss next week. We'll see, but I may miss next week. Might be at the end, but if not, I'll see everybody the week after. So thanks.
Yep.
Thank you for coming. Let's see.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll probably drop off to a few robot things to work on.
All right. Can't keep you from your lid.
Exactly.
The lens.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Yeah. Cool. It's
All
just
right.
down to us.
It's just for the last three. Let's see if we can get something going here.
Right.
So, did you have some knowledge on this, don't you, Randall? Because I'm a bit...
I've been playing with it. Yeah, I've been playing with it a bit. I was going to play with it last night and got distracted by karaoke, which is the other reason I'm tired this morning because I was up way too late with karaoke again. Tuesday nights are the best nights for karaoke here in town, and so it's always a push to try to make Wednesday morning shows. But one of the things I've seen, first, it's really nice that apparently I've been watching the Flutter channels, and the beta channel for Flutter now contains a version of Dart that has both patterns and records enabled. So if you say Flutter channel beta, although I prefer you don't do that, I'll tell you two different ways to avoid that in a second. If you say Flutter channel beta and then build a project, it builds it, and you'll see the min SDK is actually 3 dot something now. Really cool. That means it's going to enable Dart 3 features and patterns and records are pretty much done. I noticed a few things in my experimentation a couple days ago about exhaustiveness of cases, because we don't quite have all the sealed classes in place. Apparently, I got to find a to-do list somewhere to see how far along it's gotten. And all this is in public. Everything I'm talking about is in public. Because you can watch the commits hourly to the SDKs, to the language spec, to the Flutter, to Dart, to the and also now to the code labs, and the website are getting hourly updates. So we are really in a rapidly moving period to get this through. But if you build with Flutter Create, if you switch to the beta branch and you build Flutter Create, it will now say in the pub spec, it will now say, if you can open the pub spec, you can see it.
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay.
1 second.
I
need to make things bigger. I need to embiggen.
Embiggen. Command plus on VSC, because it's.
I can do that. I just want to keep it. I want to keep it the same. I don't know, like how big things should be. Like, I don't know. Is that big enough for everyone? Hopefully, everyone can see that.
Big enough for me.
Looks good.
Yeah.
I've got a new.
Yeah.
This is some code that we did before. Let's. The thing you were talking about, Randall, was this is like a test project.
If
you were talking about this. What?
Yeah. But if you create a brand new project while you're switched on to beta, it looks like that. It looks just like that already. Well, with the actual precise number.
Yeah, like
some number like that. Yeah. It looks something like that. So that's good. But yeah, except for the sealed classes, a lot of it seemed to work. And the only scariness I have right now is it took me a good 3 hours to read through the spec, and my eyes were glazing over more and more as I got closer and closer to the end. I do not envy the technical writers that are working on behalf of the Dart and Flutter teams of the changes they're going to have to make, even to things as simple as the language tour. The language tour is going to be different. It has to be. Because right now they can casually refer to some feature like async, and they've already got a detailed paper on async somewhere else. But patterns and records are going to find their way into short code. There's going to be APIs you need to call using records. You're going to get records back from some APIs. Simon?
Yeah. I was going to say that's the thing that we have to be careful, right? I think from a library author perspective, you need to be careful where you're putting these things so you don't confuse people early on. I think a lot of the time, I thought of a use case that we could demo in a minute of records that I briefed you on the other day, Randall. I think that would be a great example here. When very often you need to kind of glue a few objects together in tight relationship, and that's normally kept within a function or within a class, and that's a perfect use case for those kind of new features.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. Again, my eyes were glazing over about midway through the spec, but about midway through the spec, they were talking about things like for destructuring pattern like A, B in something that returns tuples. And that's going to be cool. That is going to be really awesome to essentially have two variables per iteration that are coming from maybe two different sources. Wow. It's going to be crazy. I also found a syntax for let. You can say if a case var a in the parentheses.
What's it? So look, I'm going to type it in here, right?
Yeah, you can type it. It should work. Yeah. Say create an A. Do final A equals hello or something. Okay. Now do if left paren a case var a. Now that block has a local copy of A, but it's writable.
Right. So
that is so cool. There's our let. We finally got let.
Yeah, I mean that could also be taken. This could also be really difficult to kind of I get it. Whoa.
That's just it's the corner case of all the different
No,
syntaxes coming together.
That's interesting. It actually saying here.
Yeah, that a
because yeah. Why isn't it being used?
That is okay. So we found a bug in the Dart beta because
you're using it. You're setting it.
The analysis. Well, maybe it's because it's been set but not been used. So if I say print A, maybe that could be like maybe.
But that's going to print that, right?
No,
it did. So setting it doesn't.
Assigning it. Well, no, because assigning it means that you're still not actually making effective.
Right. Oh, that's a smart lint. That's a very smart lint.
That's a very smart
I guess.
Oh
you are using it, but you're not. Yeah.
Using it.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's going to make for some people's pulling hair out, trying to figure out why they're having issues.
This and it's also going to be, if this kind of code ends up in simple people's code, they're going to be confused. The language all of a sudden now has you must be this much taller to understand.
Well, I would say that this is a perfect example of a lint check that you probably shouldn't do, right? Like this is just confusing, right? You probably want like B, right, or at least have some sort of
yes, because
not a single letter, but you get the point.
I'm gonna, if otherwise we're gonna see stuff on Discord where it's gonna be like, I don't know why A has this value when I changed it, and then we're gonna be like, no, you changed the local copy.
Oh god, so many. I see Stack Overflow posts in my future.
This is the Permanent Employment for Content Producers Act of 2023.
So let's talk.
We're gonna have so much work to do as explainers for all this stuff.
Yeah,
it's gonna be insane, and that's why, again, I don't envy the people doing technical writing for Dart Dev, because they're going to have to explain at least enough of this that you'll like. How do you Google for that? Try Googling for a case var A. Where are you going to end up? You're not going to end up on any useful web page.
Nope.
So let's carry before we start going off on one here. Let's carry on with the things, right? So actually, this question came
John
up.
brought up something. John brought up something in our chat. Oh, okay. Sorry, Simon. John brought up something in. What do we want to plug the Flutter Build Show? I think we do.
Yeah. At some point, but hang on. Let me just.
Later.
I'm playing with a new Dart modifier class feature, but it's really confusing. Can you explain the keyword interface? You feel like it's different from other language? No, it's exactly the whole problem with Dart is it wasn't the same as every other language, and they wanted it. So here's an example of interface.
Yep. So
there you go. We got like an interface class, and both have to be implemented. If I can't extend it, right? So if I try and extend. Oh, it will probably compile. It won't compile. Let's just check, because that's. Oh dear. Is that because it's not a function? That's not supposed to work.
maybe they're not totally implemented yet.
Fail, and I shouldn't be able to declare functions in it either.
Right.
Wow.
Okay. So either the oh no, missing.
Well, so there you've got
because this is correct because it needs me to implement it.
Because it's implements, but not.
But I should not be able to extend that class and have it implemented.
Well,
wait. Do you need the word class? Isn't it just interface shape? I think interface class is something else.
No, that is no.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, because now you get the.
Oh, now you get the errors.
Well, because it doesn't know what shape is.
Everything.
But does interface automatically make it abstract?
To
where you can't.
There's like 5 keywords.
Now you've got it. Now you're getting the error that you can't extend.
No, but the whole point of interface, because that's exactly the same as an abstract class, right? The whole point of interface
there are differences.
Implementation.
Yep. what
Abstract
we're all
classes, yes,
describing is
somebody
we
else
don't
said,
know what this
abstract
stuff
classes,
is yet.
It's valid. And yes, they are. They stay valid. It doesn't break anything else that adds functionality. But this is interesting. So yeah, this is just going to say you're missing the concrete implementation of
Right.
A. But you strictly speaking, you know, even if I got rid of this, the point here is that
You shouldn't be able to do that. Yeah.
Right. This always so generally speaking, for some reason it's not working. This is still obviously beta.
Wait, I thought final means you can't extend it. Add final to that.
No. What we're saying is you can't. No. The difference here is you have to implement it, right? So final class means you can't extend it. So this is going to error now because I can't implement it or extend it or do anything with it, right?
Oh, okay. Sorry, not final then.
Right?
Yeah.
But declaring something as an interface, it does exactly what another language is supposed to, which means you must use implements, right? It means you have to, if you have a field in here, right, or a field or a value or a function, it has to be implemented by these. So essentially, it enforces this abstract nature. But it looks to me like it's not working. So maybe I've read the information wrong, but also this is not necessarily working yet, right? Like if you remember rightly, it's patterns and records. This is not patterns and records. So
right.
Yeah,
they may not be done.
Yeah, it's not finished cooking yet. So
yep.
For those that
that's why it's only beta.
For those that are interested, there is a place called the Language Funnel. If I can find it, I will post a link to this. This is where language features are put through the cooker, and yeah, ready for implementation. Async yield should work with a wait for something like that. Private fields, inline classes, patterns related features. I don't know.
It's in there. It's in that list. It's class annotations is the name of where that we're talking about things.
Am I missing something here?
That's too small for me to tell where you're missing.
Keep scrolling down.
It's called type annotations. It's under the word type for some reason, as I recall.
Huh.
Oh, come on. I was just looking at it yesterday.
Generic metadata type.
Class annotations for disallowing use of super types, seal classes.
Yeah, that's it.
Experiment. I mean, this is still like just experimental. Let's not even go there right now. That's
right. Maybe because the experiment's not enabled. Maybe that's why it's not working.
Possibly. No, because you wouldn't get because the syntax highlight wouldn't work. No, something else is going on there, but fine. It's fine. It's fine. The ship's just sinking. Don't worry. It's fine. So
it's a little wet.
So what we have got here, we've obviously got the stuff I'm talking about, but also we've got multiple return types now, right? So this is what you call a record, right? So we're returning a record of X and Y, and here's our two different return types. Obviously, it could be variables, whatever. And then we're doing we call it unpacking extraction, right, of the two return types into local variables. Destructuring, that's it, and naming them. However, you can put the record in a value, and then you can actually access the record fields in like an unnamed way. So then I could do final lap equals this, right? And final. Essentially, that's what it was doing. Yeah, in essence, that's what the destructuring does. You're taking out the two entries in the record and then put them into local variables and then be able to use them in your scope. So obviously the names here I don't think are required in this case. I think naming them, you're supposed to be able to access the names of the components outside, aren't you? So I thought you could do this, but maybe I'm wrong. See if it compiles? No, it doesn't like that. I believe you had numbers or names as an option, but you know what it might be is because do you reckon? Hang on, do these have to have isn't there a different syntax for that? I feel like there's a different syntax. Let's go learn. Let's go learn. Do we have?
I think there's colon.
Is it in this? Is it the features? Is it in the features spec?
Yeah. That's the 3-hour read. Followed by sleep.
I will post this. I'll post this in the chat for people that want to read it.
Especially late at night for bedtime. This is a bedtime
someone wants to know,
document.
Does a nullable record work? So let's try it. Let's just do this
no.
long. I want to know. So if we put a question mark here, yes.
Uh-huh.
Oh, so each one, each of the the matched value of type double nullable isn't assignable to object nullable. Oh, because these don't have types. So if this was double nullable, how does this work? I have no idea. I don't think it's like that. You do your type to the right hand side, don't you, or something like this? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, there's some syntax. It's already escaped me.
Let's have a look.
Can you just throw a question mark at the end of that, like you did?
It's a good question. Let's try it. No,
doesn't like it.
We're learning, everyone. Yeah. These are not. That's not. We want this is the spec. These are just the issues summary. Yeah. Okay. So multiple destructuring. So yeah, I think.
I saw at least once in the spec, though, and this is part of what scares me. I saw at least once in
this
the
is
spec.
extracting the keys from a map.
Go ahead.
So you can actually like destructure from a map now, and you can destructure from a list. So let me make the list looking.
And there's a rest operator. Basically, your spread operator can turn into a variable. That's kind of cool.
Really interesting.
Yeah. So you could say a comma b comma ... rest, and rest is everything else.
Really?
Yes. For patterns too. Imagine x ... xs.
I want it now.
Yes.
Well, I have it now.
It is right. Yeah, if you've got beta.
Yeah.
Oh, and let me mention while you're looking at that, let me also explain FVM. A lot of you are using that. I like that. I liked it for a really long time. I no longer use it because I'm using Puro, Puro.dev. I'll put a link. That's actually a much cleaner and faster and better system. And I prefer it entirely now. It's extremely efficient. If you have multiple copies of the SDK, it's storing it as Git archives that refer to each other. So anything that's the same between different versions is only stored once on your disk. So it's actually disk efficient and disk downloading efficient too. So that's really nice.
Yeah. And do you want to give a quick sentence or two about what you would use those for, just for people that may not understand?
Oh, yeah. So the reason for having something like FVM or Puro is that we all probably have real production projects that we're working on. And that's great. It has to be whatever the Flutter version is that the group is using. But now I want to play with Flutter Beta. How do I do that? How do I have them both installed and only have some of my projects be Flutter Beta and other projects be the Flutter stable? Well, that's something that Puro and FVM can both help you do without having to keep constantly switching back and forth between one and the other. You can simply have them all installed, and within microseconds, milliseconds at least, you can get from one to the other because they're already both installed. Yeah. Very nice.
So I feel like I must be missing something here. So look, this is fine. This works, right? I've got a variable. And what this is suggesting here is that you can type them, right? So by default, I'm not sure I get how these first examples work, to be honest, but you're saying here that you're not specifying a type, therefore it's untyped because this is a variable name, but then you can prefix it with a type, right? So we're saying like something like double. Right, that works. But then why the colon, right? Like that doesn't work. Oh wait, hang on a minute. That's
are you still returning null potentially?
No, you know what it is?
No, you took it out. Yeah.
Is it because down here? No, these are recognized as doubles. Because it says object right now. See, object question mark isn't assignable to double because why? That's a good question. We're learning. I mean, like it's great that you can do the.
There's more to learn. I shall be continuing to learn on all of my spare hours, which unfortunately I have too many of these days. So, yeah, expect more videos coming out soon on my Dart and Flutter
Okay,
channel.
that's not confusing at all. This is an error. Okay, good. I'm going to pretend it. Okay, not allowed. Not allowed. Okay. Give me the allowed. Give me some good examples here.
You scrolled past them. Now you're just down in the danger area.
Look, so there's a point. Right? So look, it's saying here like you can give it a name, right? So, I mean, I'm giving this a. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to try something. Yeah.
And then do you take?
No, so this is now given them. Can it be returned double? Okay.
Oh, because you're returning. Wait a minute. Go back. Look at that again.
Hang on. I just want to see. I was hoping to try and create an error there, but no, it's just going to map that because it's dynamic, I guess.
But if you look at it, it's actually returning a map. You're returning a map of double, but it wants just an object.
Well, no, because this is like a record of a map or a map.
It's a record. Yeah.
I mean, no, because it's a pattern, right? So you can pattern match that. So the idea here is that you can then pull out. You can say lat.
Yeah.
Is X or something, right? So you can actually say
the error string was making it look like you were returning a map.
Y long.
And that trying to put it into.
What?
So this is it's learning. We're learning.
Yeah.
So
well, can you take the squigglies out now in your return?
I don't think. Well, no, because then this is saying it's a record with two unnamed parameters. Where basically, I don't think this is just a way of naming it. I don't think it's a map. I think we used to.
I bet it is a map. I bet it's a record consisting of just a map. No, wait. The unpacking is unpacking the map.
No, it's not, because this does not declare that down here when we create it.
But that's what was weird, because when you don't have the squiggly brackets in, right? The error, when you look at the text of the error,
is this how you declare it? Well, let's do this. Let's do int here.
So if you want to give it the names, you have to have it. Well, but now you need to throw a Z or something in there. Yeah.
Okay. So no. I know what it is. It's not a map. It's the same syntax as parameters. Named parameters.
If you name them, they got to be inside. But
yeah, it's the same. So it's the same syntax. This is just the same syntax as parameters, right?
Yeah.
Right. You're just doing these are named parameters. That's all you're doing there. Right? That makes sense. It's interesting because our brains went to map because we normally see variable side map and parameters as separate. But no, we're saying that records are declared. We declare a record, you're declaring it the same as you would do parameters from what I can see here, right? Does that mean we can do like optionals? Huh, let's find out. Well, it doesn't like the square bracket, so I'm guessing that's like a list.
At this point, we're just typing random syntax and see if we have something that is valid. We're better than ChatGPT. Ask ChatGPT; it'll know. It'll know precisely about this. It'll give you. It'll at least have great enthusiasm. Have you tried this?
You should try that. I mean, so
all we need is Clippy. We need Clippy popping up saying, "It looks like you're trying to make a record."
No optional parameter syntax allowed.
That's where this Chat GPT technology is going. We're going to get Clippy.
That's correct.
I'm just waiting for the day. I'm waiting for the day that we get Clippy.
I mean, like, I think. All right, so let's. Should we do? Should we just try some concrete examples of this? I guess.
I think we should just stick with cutting and pasting from the spec.
Okay. Fine. Suit yourself. So this is interesting, right? So if I was to do, here's a question for you. If I take this that long and do LOC, does that mean now I can do like LOC.x? It's named. Yeah. Yep. Okay. That's cool. That's cool, right? Because now
it is named that.
Because they're named, we're not doing the $1 and $2. I knew you could do named ones, but okay. I guess that's quite nice as well because you don't have to put these the same way around, right? You could just put y, x.
Yeah, whichever order you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just learning by fuzzing.
How do you learn? By using the syntax.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what happens, right? When you got new syntax into an old system you're used to, you just gotta be like, how is this supposedly meant to be working, right? And that's cool. Null assertion on the declarations, right? So if we did this, then we do null assertion here, right? Oh, interesting. Would prohibit weird code like this. Sorry, this is
it's in the not allowed section.
Not allowed. I read it wrong.
You keep cutting from the wrong parts.
It's like how it's like you can do null assertion here on the lock, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't need to do it there, but then you could do your normal sort of that kind of operates that kind of notion of. I do like this. Like this, there's because if you want to turn if you want to return back just 1 or 2, 3 variables or something, from a function. So many times I want to return 2 variables from a function, and
you don't want to create a class and then
in
order to be able to return it.
All right, what else do we have? I was like, can we skip past a bunch of stuff on that? Pattern matching. I really want to. So my thought here was, my thought about doing it an example in Flutter, not just in Dart like this, but in Flutter would be something like a menu where you've got like a title, you've got some associated data that you bring together, like a title, an icon, and tooltip icon and on-click handle, right? So you could actually define that as a record, you know what I mean, and have a stream of them being returned from a function like async start, and then wait for and do some other kind of funky things. I don't know, but there's it's that kind of thing, right? Because you could return back here. I mean, we're using this location example, right? But as I said, if you had, I guess there's no reason why you couldn't do like a function and call it like on tap and then string name generate items or something, right? And I wonder if we can actually do. Well, let's just find out. This is why we're doing this, right? Can we do this as like a stream, right? If we made this like
I'm not sure why we're doing it yet.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm just playing around here with some syntax, right?
I can tell.
Can we now do this as like a type? Is that how that works? Apparently, it does.
Ooh.
Oh
my god.
Okay.
Oh no.
Okay, that's cool.
No. Oh.
Okay, let's make it bigger. It's in bigger. So basically, this would mean that I could then do say yield. This would be completely pointless as an example, but I can you yield a function and a name like 1, and then this print 1 or print 1. I don't know.
We can now have parameters that are like a record of a map, and the values in the map are sealed classes that are holding other records.
You gotta give them names. You gotta give them names, Simon.
Yeah. I've got to give it on tap, right? And then
and then name.
I can unname them, right?
Oh no.
Okay. So that works.
Oh no, it works. It worked. No.
So we could say 2 and like 3, right? And then what we could do is I don't know what I'm doing. This is funny.
My god.
So now we could say something like await for item in generate items, print item name. Does that work?
Right. And then run it and then execute it.
How did that?
Final in.
Oh, what's this? Hang on.
Oh, it's not a wait for. Are you
generating? You gotta make main async.
Oh, thanks. That was
Aha. Future void. That's our exact position at this point.
Oh, look, 1, 2, 3. That works. What was that?
He said that's our exact position right now. Future void.
Okay, look, so that worked, and then we could.
Wow.
So you can imagine that you can now
and then execute the function too.
Function, yeah.
Yeah. Why have an item if you're not actually running the function?
Right.
Let's run the function and print the result alongside it. Why not?
It's already a print though.
Oh, but I'm saying like.
Oh, what's that going to do? That's going to run the print.
He's printing
in the middle of a print. It'll print a void.
Yeah.
No, but why?
Yeah, no.
It's doing
null.
Well, because you're printing.
It's
the function
printing 1, 2, 3,
which is printing.
Yeah, you're in.
Oh man!
I was returning something from my function. Shut your faces.
We have invented a new time.
1, 2, 3. There you go.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so that's kind of interesting, right? That because when you declare a record, you're essentially declaring a type, right? So anywhere where you have a generic, you can now have a record. Oh, does this mean
Discord is going to be nutty? Discord is going to be. I tried this, and there's some mismatch of curly braces to begin with.
Oh my gosh. And you know how many people when they're going to upgrade their projects and be like everything's going to break, and it's just going to be like, why?
Well, luckily the old syntax still works, right? Except for a couple of corner cases with case and switch and stuff. The rest of it all still works.
Yeah.
So Dart 3 should be a drop-in for almost everybody. and if it's not you, you know who you are.
Yeah, right.
You did something weird, right? What is this language? Yes. Yeah. This is the Kotlin you guys wanted. You wanted Kotlin. You got Kotlin. You asked for it. I'm missing this from Kotlin. I'm missing this from Scala. Can we have all that? Yeah, we now apparently have all that.
Yep.
So this is kind of interesting, right? That you can like. Does that mean I can now?
I'll never miss Kotlin again.
Oh, wait, what?
Rust. Oh, there we go. There we go. I like that. Here.
Just wait for Web 3.
Yeah. Oh, we have Web 3. It's the NFT pipe, right?
Yeah.
All right. So that's kind of cool, right? So what you can do here, you can have, let's say you had a map somewhere.
man.
You can actually
Yeah.
extract by name the fields, right?
Right.
Into variables. So that's another desugaring thing you can do.
Oh boy.
Yep. Oh boy.
Switch statement. I do like.
Well, that's just a JSON map, right? That's just doing a to JSON from JSON is all it is doing, right?
It's basically, yeah,
No.
yeah. But the difference is done at compile time, right? So it's not the same as like.
Oh, can that go across to an isolate? Ooh. Is this a send port type? Can we send
there's no.
we don't need a send port with just isolate run. You don't.
No, you can return any object now over an isolate, but it will capture the things. There's not like a limit on types anymore, if you remember rightly.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah. This is going to be fun. This is
the
width, an eternal amount of work to do now.
Yeah, that won't work anymore.
I have an eternal amount of unpaying work to do. That's the problem. It's gonna be my role as a GDE has now been defined for the next year.
I do like this notion that a switch statement can now return a value. There's so many times I wanted this.
Yeah. And this is going to be fun.
A lot of the time, you end up with this kind of idea of in at least in the previous version of Dart, you would do like a function and each of these would be a return statement, right?
Yeah.
And it works, but it's not nice.
Well,
it's not as nice.
Imagine where this is going to come really into play is JSON to Dart. Because when you have JSON, sometimes stupid API designers will make a key that has either a single string value or they'll have a list of strings in the same slot. And you're expected to switch out which of those two you're interpreting it as, depending on the type that it came back as. Yep. Now we can do that so much easier because we can actually destructure the list as part of the value. You just put bracket L bracket, and now you've got a list right there already. Oh, this is going to be slick. Yes.
How about you guys talk between yourself just for a second, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Right.
So, John, we got way more to do. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. But you know what? While he's gone, do you want to bring up the YouTube Flutter channel, and we can just briefly mention the new series, the Flutter build show?
What was? Yeah, let me see if I can figure out how to do this here because I got to show a screen on this. It's in YouTube. I'm subscribed to Flutter. There's not a specific channel for it.
They don't. Yeah, they haven't started a playlist or a channel for it because there's only the 2 shows so far. So
where is?
I threw the link in the chat. If you
if you already did that, then I can do that. I can just click on that, and I can bring this up. Let's see here. Where's my share button? Share, present. It's not slides. Extra camera. Share screen. Open system settings. I might have to restart to get that to work. Oh, I hate that when I have to do that. Use password. Right. I'm way up. Okay. Quit and reopen. Oh, that won't happen. Okay, sorry. I can't without quitting Edge.
That's fine.
I'm using Edge, by the way. Hey, you should be happy.
Yeah,
I'm using
nice.
I like it. Well, I switched to it because it's the only place I get chat AI. Yeah.
Well, the thing that Randall was trying to bring up is so the Flutter team has a new series that they started. If you haven't seen it yet, it's called the Flutter Build Show. Yeah. And they have just the first episode out.
This is the Craig's one for
Craig's, the new show that Craig. And I don't think it's going to be only Craig. The intro made it sound like they'll be having other people doing shows, but he did the first one yesterday on custom render objects. So when you should use them, what they are. It's really good.
Very cool.
So, I think there'll be some good shows. And they're not
I think
long.
that
I think
would
that
have
one was only
solved
about
our
20 minutes or something.
that would have solved our problem of hanging off the bottom edge of the list view and being in some sort of half-looking thing.
So
customer
I'll
interrupted
put
would
the
add
link to the introduction, so everyone go watch it over here. That's the introduction, and then there's also the first one.
This is important too. Here,
object.
nice.
Oh, nice.
So you just go there, not worry about setting up your own environment. Yeah. Dartpad.
There you go.
But
So
my CodePad also does that. My CodePad already.
What is the URL for it? Is it like beta.dartpad.dev or something? I'm guessing.
I think it's probably
I think you just changed the channel. There's a drop down.
Is it like a drop down? Is there
menu bar? Yeah.
Yeah. It had been.
Where?
I thought I saw
Dartpad.dev on there, but I don't see a drop down. Is it in the bottom corner? Am I missing something?
No. Down the bottom left in the
stable bar. Channel. I gotcha. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, let me bring
something. You could switch it to beta 310. Yeah.
You can switch it to an old channel too. Wow.
You can. It doesn't look like you can specify though. Oh wait. Does it?
No, it's locked.
No, it doesn't.
It's just,
it's just
if you're nostalgic for when your code ran.
Like the old channel.
Use the Dart old channel.
Yes. So what is it going back? I mean, how are they determining it's not the last?
This is like the previous. This is probably just the previous.
Last major. Yeah.
The last minor version or something.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you guys can try out these new features we're talking about right here in Dartpad right now.
Yep.
I should be able to copy our lovely geolocation function.
Good luck.
And then our lovely thingy with Bob up here, I don't know, and check it in there, and then it'll magically should
run it.
Error.
That was.
Oh no, it had analyzed it. There we go.
Yay! Yep.
Cool.
So if I now go, it should say something else. 00, right?
Yep.
Yeah, nice.
Oh yeah, I'll pop that link in the channel for anyone that wants to go.
Sweet.
Look, can't see.
I'm gonna have to disappear on you guys.
All right.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thanks for stopping by, as always.
Yep.
Yeah,
we'll
indeed.
see you guys later.
Back to your Discord position. Back to
right. Yeah, at some point this afternoon, I'll probably jump back in.
I think we're gonna call it in a minute ourselves. But
yeah.
Thanks for us.
Yep.
Yep. How did I get on the wrong side of you? Look at that. You're over there now.
What?
Oh, no, you're over there. Yep, swap.
Magic.
All right. It's kind of like this is my side of the bed. It's like you get used to your side of the bed.
Yeah. Master will always be the newest.
Master's newer. Beta got frozen a few days ago, and it was the version of Dart that was in Master earlier than Flutter locks in some version of Dart always in lockstep. So every new Flutter version, even Flutter Master, has a particular Dart thing that's not always Dart Master. So we're not actually, even with beta, we're not seeing Dart Master. Even with Flutter Master, we're not seeing Dart Master. But that's not too much of an issue because they're just making these hundreds of changes a day to fix things and make things work right now. And it won't matter much what day you kind of cut that off. It'll mostly work. But if you find errors, there are issues. They're taking issues on this.
Raise them as
you're playing with this, feel free to file issues against it. That's part of why the whole beta program exists.
Basically,
for us to eventually play
check out the beta channel. Try and build your apps. If they build great, if it's a bug, that's what I want to hear about.
Yeah, be nice. Cool deal. Alrighty. Anyway, Simon, I gotta go back to bed.
Yeah, so I think that's it. I think we're gonna call it there. I think we've done quite a bit. I know we were just experimenting there, but I think coming
there's
up
a lot
over
more.
2 weeks, we should try and do Flutter code with the new features. I think that'd be nice.
I should be able to demonstrate a lot more next week too. I should actually have some time to sit down and do some Dart 3 playing.
You can take over from me. I don't mind.
I can do live coding. Yeah, I now that I have the cool new setup, the nice expansive laptop and and something that's more than 5 years old. So very nice. So I've got an M1 finally. Yes, not an M2, just an M1. But it works, and it works blindingly fast. And it's 8 hours on battery. How the heck are they doing that? I was like an hour and a half with my old laptop. It's like it would die.
That's the answer.
Yes.
You know, I saw recently. Apparently, Intel are licensing ARM, and they're going to make a RISC-V ARM and Intel x86 all on one die.
Whoa. Okay.
So that's going to be interesting.
Did they finally make the giant machine that shrinks things down to micro size somewhere on the Intel campus?
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway. They're down to wavelengths, though. They're down to the point where it's like...
No. So those nanometer numbers that they show are not anything to do with the actual physical size anymore.
Oh.
It's a marketing thing. It's purely marketing.
Okay.
So
what is the actual numbers then? What do you mean?
It is about the technology and how they process it, but it's not like the size of the transistor anymore. What they're talking is the scale of the lithography that they're using. Doesn't mean the transistor's that big.
I remember a time 20 years ago when Tektronix, the big employer at the time in Oregon, who I worked for actually for 5 years,
making some scopes.
Makers of scopes, yes, but I was in their microprocessor development division. So we had an 8080 in-circuit emulator that I was documenting and telling people about. But I remember that they had a building that they'd been using for these early microchip stuff, and it shook when big trucks would come by on the street, half a block away.
Yeah.
Enough to ruin some of their experiments. So they had to actually get the road, quieted during certain hours so they could run these experiments. So to be able to do that, wow. Just to think that, a truck going by is enough to ruin.
They have that now. They have, what was it? There's actually what's it called?
Stabilized rooms.
Actually, there's a thing where you get literally a little needle. It's like a microscopic needle that kind of touches the surface of something, and you can actually visualize the surface of an object by just. I can't remember what it's called now. It's really interesting. It's how they literally do you could do 3-dimensional pictures of CPU dies with these things. It's really interesting.
Anyway. We live in interesting times. Anyway, we're running over, so.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. We should just natter a bit for some time. Maybe we should do that.
Yes.
All right. Ciao. Ciao, everyone. Thanks.